When I pulled into my driveway and heard that backs up beep, the one I thought, great, a delivery truck. I did not expect to find an excavator ripping through my rose bushes or my neighbor, the HOA president, standing there like he'd just popped over to borrow a cup of sugar. That was the moment I realized somebody had decided my property lines were optional. I'd been gone 3 days, trapped in a soul-sucking mandatory training, fantasizing about a cold beer and forgetting PowerPoint existed. Instead, the beeping hit me from behind the house as if my yard had turned into a construction site overnight. 2 acres of farmhouse that predated the subdivision roses I'd coaxed from bare sticks into something proud, all of it was supposed to be mine. My deed said so plain as day. Developers had carved a subdivision called Sunset Ridge Estates around me years ago, and the papers made one thing clear: I wasn't under their HOA. That fact was going to matter a lot in a way I didn't yet understand. I walked around the back and stopped. Mini excavator. Trench 6 feet deep, 20 feet long, right along what I'd always known was my property line. My roses were shredded. 2 guys in hard hats hovered over a map on a truck hood, confused. I called out voice level because yelling doesn't help. "What's going on here?" The older worker squinted at the map, then at me. "We've got a work order for a pool foundation. According to this is the line. According to some paper, maybe. Definitely not according to my survey." I told them that. And then, predictably from behind me, "There you are. I was wondering when you'd get back." Bill, new neighbor H. O. A president man who'd moved in like 2 years earlier and treated the neighborhood like his personal fiefdom, showed up in a polo embroidered with the subdivision logo like he'd been crowned mayor of Sunset Ridge. He had that casual, infuriating confidence of a man who believes rules exist to be interpreted in his favor. "Board approved the pool last Tuesday," he said, like it solved everything. "You should have gotten the email." I laughed, not a nice laugh, and told him I wasn't in the HOA. He shrugged, condescending smile on, and told the workers to keep digging. "We're doing you a favor," he said. "This will increase property values." I stared at the trench and at the shredded roses and felt that heat rise, the kind that makes you want to roar. But I'd learned yelling doesn't win disputes. Paperwork and a recorder do. So I went inside, grabbed my phone, and hit record. "I am the owner of this property," I said steady. "You do not have permission to excavate on my land." Bill's face went red. He started in about authority and board approval, stepping between me and the workers, telling them permits were handled. The older worker's expression shifted from doing a job to, "Oh, legal problem." Smart guys, they didn't want to be the ones on the front line of a trespass suit. I called the non-emergency police line and the county building inspector. The police said someone would be out. The inspector said she'd come to verify permits. Bill tried to keep them working. I did something childish and wonderful. I dragged a lawn chair and cooler out and parked myself square in the path of the excavator, a little human speed bump. It made the workers stop because nobody wants to run over the guy with a cooler on his lawn. The inspector arrived, first woman in her 50s, the kind who's seen every backyard scandal in the county. She asked for permits. Bill handed her a folder full of HOA approvals and board meeting minutes. She read, and the patience in her face evaporated. "Where's your city building permit?" she asked. "You need a permit for any excavation over 2 feet. There should be utility markings, soil analysis. You're not exempt just because the board likes the idea." Bill tried the old property line shift dodge, as if boundaries are like fashion, suddenly different with the season. The inspector didn't bite. She compared my original survey and deed to their site map and said what I'd already felt. "This map is wrong. That trench is on the wrong property." Bill tried bargaining, whispering to her about contractors and being reasonable. Bad move. Her expression went from calm to barely concealed fury. She issued a stop work order cited for unpermitted excavation failure to mark utilities and setback violations. "The fine started at $5,000, she said. Bill's confident face drained. The police came, took statements, and confirmed what the inspector suspected: criminal trespass, property damage. Neighbors gathered because you know how news travels in a subdivision, very fast and deliciously loud when there's an excavator involved. I stood in my ruined rosebed and watched the tableau, Bill stumbling through explanations while the inspector and cop did their jobs. The workers loaded their gear and left, awkwardly avoiding eye contact with the guy who'd told them the map was fine. That should have been the end, right? No. Bill tried one last charming move, offered to pay for new roses to work things out. I looked at him at the torn roots, the gash in my lawn, and realized the audacity he'd trespassed destroyed, then offered to bargain away the damage like it was a trifle. I called my attorney that night. This is where the story takes its twist, not cinematic, but human. The inspector's stop work order opened a door that lets other things fall through, and when an investigator peels back one corner of what you think is just poor judgment, you sometimes find a pattern. What started as a single act of hubris by a man named Bill turned out to be a 2-year habit of stretching the truth and stretching HOA authority. Neighbors came forward with stories, fences that were suddenly on the common area sheds, forced to move though city code said otherwise, landscaping installed partially on private property. It wasn't a mistake, it was a strategy. 3 weeks after the trench bill was packing boxes, the bank's title search had found my attorney's lien for the restoration costs. The county had red-flagged his property for unpermitted work. The HOA called an emergency meeting. The board found Bill had been making unilateral decisions and approving payments to a contractor owned by his brother-in-law for work that either hadn't been done or was wildly overpriced. Financial irregularities boundary, fiddles a gate built partly on city property. The audit read like a checklist of everything a rogue HOA president shouldn't do. He lost the presidency. He lost the House. There were fine settlements, a state-level probe into misappropriation, and perhaps, best of all, the HOA was forced to overhaul how it operated. New transparency, regular audits, term limits, an ombudsman position. The muddy hole where he planned his infinity pool became a mosquito pit for a while, then a patch of grass. The HOA used reserve funds to repair damage, which meant dues went up for a spell. People were mad at that, understandably, but they were also relieved that the person who'd abused power had been exposed. My yard, after 3 months and a lot of work, came back better than before. The landscaper's premium restoration irrigation upgraded topsoil, replaced mature roses planted cost more than Bill's offer, but the new system actually fixed decades of patchwork. The inspector's report, the police report, the photos and video I kept framed, yes, on my desk were quiet. Reminders that consequences can be public, expensive, and oddly satisfying. Here's what I learned, and I'll be blunt. First, know exactly where your property lines are. Keep the survey handy, not in some drawer you forget about. Second, when someone waves fake authority at you, ask to see the paperwork that actually gives them that authority. Third, the most effective thing sometimes is to sit quietly on your property with a lawn chair and a cooler and make someone else's bad choices very visible. But there's a deeper lesson, the one that really stuck. Power left unchecked becomes permission to play fast and loose with other people's lives. Bill convinced himself he was doing the neighborhood a favor. In his head, the aesthetics and the greater good justified the means. It's a classic trap vision without consent, action without accountability. When one person starts making unilateral decisions, it affects everyone. Standing up to that behavior isn't just about protecting your roses, it protects neighbors who are too nervous or too busy to fight. Sometimes justice is quiet and bureaucratic, inspections, citations, audits. Sometimes it's loud and social, neighbors talking, emails forwarded, people finally paying attention. Both are useful. And yes, there's a small petty pleasure in seeing a man who thought he could steal a few feet of land lose his house because he miscalculated how much people would tolerate. So I'm left with the yard. The rose is a framed photo of Bill pointing at his fake map while the inspector shakes her head behind him. I'm left with neighbors who now know where their lines are and an HOA that runs like a real community, messy, democratic, and slower, yes, but better for it. And I'm left thinking, what if I'd missed those 3 days? What if I hadn't sat down in that lawn chair? It's a scary thought because people like Bill count on that inaction. One final thing, standing up didn't turn me into a hero. It made me a stubborn neighbor who happened to have the right documents and the patience to see things through. It cost time, it cost a little aggravation, and yes, it cost money up front for legal help. But the outcome protected more than my property. It nudged a whole community back toward fairness. So here's my question for you. When someone in your life claims authority they don't have, do you push back or do you let it slide? Is the right response always to escalate, or is there a middle way between confrontation and silence? Tell me what you'd do. And if you have a story like this, share it. I want to know if I'm crazy for framing a lawn chair as a form of civic armor, or if sometimes, just sometimes, that's exactly what it takes.